Days after Lai Ching-te was sworn in as Taiwan's president, China launched a two-day-long military drill on the 23rd of May surrounding Taiwan in what it called punishment drills for so-called separatist acts. Now, US Indo-Pacific Commander Admiral Samuel Paparo in a recent interview said that military exercises of China around Taiwan were in fact a rehearsal for an invasion. Well, to discuss matters further, we're joined by Dr. Srikanth Kondapalli, Professor in Chinese Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Mr. Kondapalli, pleasure having you here. Welcome to WION World is One. Is China preparing or rather rehearsing for a Taiwan invasion? Do you feel so?
Well, as you mentioned, there was an exercise that was conducted by the People's Liberation Army, Navy, Air Force, and in this case, also the Coast Guard has joined the exercises, which is unusual. Number two, since September 2020, that is 1 month after Nancy Pelosi, the US congressional leader, visited Taiwan, since then, every 9 out of 10 days, there was a PLA exercise. So what happened on May 21 this year, last week, is not quite unusual because since September 2020, there were exercises conducted almost every day. That is, according to the Chinese Global Times, 9 out of 10 days, these exercises were conducted from then onwards. The third feature of these exercises is there is an intensity in terms of the weapon usage. Initially, in 1994-95, when Taiwan for the first time conducted elections, China used missiles in the missile strait, the missile crisis across the straits, when they launched M9 and M11 missiles across Kaohsiung in southern part of Taiwan, and also in Keelung in the northeastern portion of Taiwan. So from then onwards, they were using mainly conventional weapons like Air Force, but also the H-6 bombers have been mobilized into this area. Liaoning aircraft carrier and other naval vessels have also surrounded Taiwan several times. On an average, about 300 of these exercises were conducted every year since 2020. Increasingly, they have blurred the air defense identification zone that Taiwan established in the 1960s. So in other words, the median line which used to separate Taiwan and China has now been blurred. So this is another. Finally, I think the PLA made a statement saying they want to seize state power in Taiwan. Of course, that is a far cry because Taiwan has highly modernized armed forces and they could inflict heavy damage on China as well.
Dr. Kondapalli, now as you mentioned that the inclusion of the Coast Guard was the only thing you found unusual in the recent punishment drills, because China has been carrying out these drills every 9 out of 10 days. So nothing else you found unusual here. Of course, this statement coming from the US Admiral regarding a rehearsal for an invasion, it doesn't seem so, because if that is true, then they have been practicing that rehearsal every 9 out of 10 days. But if we were to just see where this is going, is it just fear-mongering that every once in every 2 weeks, they are going to carry out some drills to scare Taiwan, and then some sort of a reaction would come from the US? It has already been going on. You've given a good amount of history from 2020. We're in 2024. Where is this heading from here? Will China keep resorting to this kind of these kind of drills just to keep Taiwan on high alert all the time, or are they planning to do something further?
Well, according to a former Taiwanese defense minister, Tang Yao-ming, the Chinese have 6 ways of invading Taiwan. One is the short-range ballistic missile preemptive strikes for paralyzing the systems in Taiwan, military systems. So they have an estimated 2,000 missiles opposite to Taiwan in Zhejiang and Fujian provinces. So these SRBM preemptive strikes would have demolished most of the installations in Taiwan. Number two is paralyzing the C4ISR, command control, command communications, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems. Third is amphibious landing operations. Fourth, airstrikes. Fifth is a sea blockade. And finally, an airborne invasion force.
Do you feel they'll use any of these methods to actually carry out an invasion? From your personal, it's your opinion that I'm just asking for, given the vast amount of study that you've done on China's, their methods of taking forward this kind of a conflict that is brewing. It's simmering since a while.
China has a medium capability to invade Taiwan.
All right.
China today has the largest number of naval forces in the world. In terms of numbers, they have nearly 346 naval vessels compared to 260 for the United States, compared to even 180 for India.
Yes.
So China has the capability, medium capability to invade Taiwan. However, it is not just the bean count. President Putin told Xi Jinping that he will complete the Ukrainian war in 3 days. However, we are in the third year of the conflict. So the problem for Xi Jinping is, what if he lands in the same way that President Putin landed in Ukraine?
He doesn't want to get stuck in Taiwan, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So that would mean China rise would be a problematic. And if the casualties on Chinese side increase, which is very likely, that the Taiwanese can inflict heavy damage on China, then the problem for China is the disintegration of the Communist Party in China itself. So China has to weigh very carefully the consequences of invading Taiwan. So it is not just, invasion, but there are a lot of consequences for regime change in China and Taiwan.
Dr. Kondapalli, you've mentioned this twice, that Taiwan also has a lot of capability on its end. It can also inflict damage on China. Now, if one is to really look at the two regions on the map, it's really more than a David and Goliath situation. Taiwan in itself cannot stand a chance in front of China. So are you referring to the aid that it is getting from the US, which will help it inflict some kind of damage back towards China?
It is true there is so much of asymmetry between China and Taiwan.
Yes.
However, Taiwan can also stand alone for 3 months, which is quite a big time in modern day warfare.
Absolutely.
And in the meanwhile, also you have the United States 1979 Taiwan Relations Act, which mentions about the possible American assistance to Taiwan. In addition, of course, there are other countries like Japan, Australia, and others who are likely to support Taiwan in the event of an invasion.
Dr. Kondapalli, finally, I also wanted to get your thoughts on this. This is something that I had mentioned earlier before we started the interview. Do you feel India will have some kind of a role if there is a conflict which ensues, and if China really goes out to kind of invade Taiwan or to get it back into its fold, as it has always mentioned that it belongs to us anyway? Will India have a role there?
Indeed. Soon after Nancy Pelosi's visit and the PLA exercises, the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson commented that he wishes to see peace in Taiwan Straits, stability and peace in Taiwan Straits, which is an indirect snub to the Chinese in terms of their plan for invasion, number one. Number two, existentially, India has something like 40% of its trade passing through the Taiwan Straits and South China Sea. So if India rise has to happen, India has to protect its shipping in the Taiwan Straits and South China Sea. And the government has already mentioned about the plans for Act East policy, also in terms of the exercises and protecting the trade and commerce in the Andaman Nicobar and surrounding areas, including in the Straits of Malacca. So this is an indirect warning to China that if it affects the Indian commerce, India can retaliate in the Straits of Malacca. In addition, of course, also to providing some indirect support, logistics or otherwise, for the American troops as part of the Lemova agreement signed between US and India.
So India definitely will get involved if there is escalation of tensions in the region beyond military drills or punishment drills, which China pretty much carries out on a regular basis. So there's nothing out of the ordinary there. But if they go ahead, US is anyways there within a pact with Taiwan, but India will also need to safeguard its own interests to continue growing its own economy. Thank you so much for joining in, sir. That was Dr. Srikanth Kondapalli, Professor in Chinese Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, sharing a lot of insights with us right here on WION World. It's one pleasure speaking with you, sir.
Thank you.